So you get home from your school, uni, place of work, exploring a long-forgotten city of an ancient dead race, and you kick off your shoes, ready to relax, when suddenly you hear, coming through the window, the sound of a recorder. It's your neighbor, and he's heard you come home. He asks, "You want to hang out?" See, your neighbor is a giant. But don't worry, he's not like other giants. He's a friendly giant. He's pretty chill. He likes playing his music, hanging out with his friends, a giraffe and a chicken, and entertaining people by his fire. But here's the thing. If this giant really wanted to, he could smash your hut. He could level the whole village if he wanted to. So when he asks you if you want to hang out, is this a genuine offer or is this coercion? Today's thought experiment is The Gentle Giant, and it's about the nature of liberty. We've done some pretty famous thought experiments so far in this series. We've looked at Peter Singer's Drowning Child, we look at Plato's Ring of Gyges. This one is a bit more niche, but I like it because it helps to elaborate why I'm not a fan of Superman, which I talked about in the last episode. This is a debate that occurs between two Cambridge scholars, Matthew Kramer, who is a professor of legal philosophy, and Quentin Skinner, one of the most famous intellectual historians of the past 50-odd years, and they are talking about the nature of liberty. Skinner is partly responsible for the revival of interest in republicanism in political thought, in particular its conception of liberty. Kramer, on the other hand, is a staunch partisan of what gets called the liberal understanding of freedom. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive onto the nature of freedom quite yet. I might do it in the future. But let's just say that there are 4 important things to keep in mind when understanding the differences between republicanism and liberalism. Now, the first thing is very important. We are not talking about American politics right now. There are liberals and there are Republicans in American politics, but what we're talking about is 2 different traditions of political thought that are closely related in some ways, but have a fundamental disagreement about what it means to be a free person. The second thing to bear in mind is that liberals understand freedom as the absence of interference, right? You are free when no one is stopping you from doing something, whatever it is, and simply the absence of interference qualifies freedom. The third point is that Republicans understand freedom as the absence of arbitrary interference. It is the ability of people to interfere in your choices without accountability that makes you less free, not interference simply put. Which leads us to the fourth point. Republicans are interested in interference when it could manifest. It doesn't actually have to occur. It is simply the power to interfere that limits our liberty, because you know that you are under someone's thumb. Liberals, on the other hand, need that actual interference. Also, and importantly, liberals think that all interference, regardless of the type of government we're dealing with, limits freedoms, whereas Republicans would say, if you have the rule of law and if you have democratic accountability and an appropriate institutional structure, the law doesn't limit your freedom in a relevant way. Kramer introduces the Gentle Giant as a way of critiquing Republican liberty. So he asks us to imagine a community near some hills. And in this community, a child is born. And this child looks normal at first, but then they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They also get smarter and smarter and smarter, and then faster and faster and faster, until they are so strong, so smart, so fast, that they outmatch everyone in the village by a country mile. If they wanted to, they could basically rule the village as an autocratic tyrant, because no one could really stop them. And more to the point, they know it. They're aware of their power. They know that if they had a few helpers, they could basically set up a totalitarian control of this village. Now, this is a classic example of Republican non-freedom, right? This is a tyrant who can arbitrarily interfere in all of the choices of the villagers, and the villagers are well aware of it. By the Republican account, the giant has to limit the liberty of the villagers. He has the ability to act, he has the knowledge to act, and the villagers know that if he chose, he could smash them all to pieces. But Kramer has a twist. The giant isn't interested in being a tyrant. His psychological disposition really means he wants to go up into the hills, live in a cave, eat the purple berries, read some books, occasionally exercise, and just be left alone. Now, Kramer says these psychological dispositions are unlikely to change. The giant is simply uninterested in using his strength. So he says under these circumstances, it shows the problem with arbitrary power, or the idea of freedom as the absence of arbitrary power. The villagers remain free. They know the giant's a cool guy and he's not going to interfere. The giant's a cool guy, he's not interested in interfering. So is anyone's freedom actually being limited by the presence of the giant? So what Kramer is basically describing is lazy Superman. Superman, but he just wants to hang out in the Fortress of Solitude with his robots and his crystals and, watch Superman television and not do anything. Now, would this be a source of unfreedom for us? Because we know that Superman's up there and he could rule the world, and Superman knows that he could do it, but we also know that he has no interest in it. Does this reduce our liberty? Kramer says no, it's not describing the situation. Now, they might have arbitrary power, but the link between arbitrary power and unfreedom is not really as strong as Republicans think, because we are aware that there is no interest by the giant or by Superman to interfere with the rest of humanity. They may have arbitrary power, but they're not reducing our ability to act. Freedom is not constrained by their presence. Is he right? I don't think so. And Skinner provides the reason why. The problem is in how Kramer describes the gentle giant. So initially, it seems that the giant is constrained, right? He says there is zero chance of him actually acting in a tyrannical way. But the only thing that's constraining him is himself, right? It's the giant's psychological disposition. But psychological disposition really doesn't matter, because what if it changes, right? What if one day he bonks his head on his cave, or he gets into Old Man McGuckick's whiskey and gets a mean drunk on? These are things that could happen. And you're aware of that, right? You know that this guy has power. You know that he could go wrong at any minute. So think about that offer at the beginning of the video. Do you want to come over and listen to me play my recorder with my giraffe and my chicken? That sounds like a horrible way of spending a couple of hours. But can you say no? Is this sort of like the classic mafia offer you can't refuse? I know, I should be doing voice work, it's true. But you have to ask yourself, is it coercion? Because if you're like, oh, no thanks, giant. I don't feel like hanging out with your friends and listening to you play the recorder. You might be like, what, you don't like my music? Oh, that makes me really angry. You don't like my friends? That makes me angry. I'm going to have to smash the whole village up. You're always going to wonder, am I going to push him over the edge? Because the only thing that's holding him back is in his head, right? And this leads us right back to Superman. We know Superman is a good guy, right? Truth, justice, the American way. Superman is good, but the only thing that's holding him back are his down-home Kansas values, and that's it, right? It's the only thing that keeps him in check. Superman is therefore a source of unfreedom, because we may think that he's a great guy, but in the back of our head, Superman's always going to be like, what if he goes wrong, right? Like, what if Superman gets into Old Man McGuckick's whiskey? What if he encounters, like a Red Lantern ring and becomes evil, right? Then we're all boned, and we know it. And there is a great series of Silver Age comics that show why this is the case. Superman punching the Flash for no reason. Superman letting some sort of blob eat Metropolis. Superman imprisoning and then killing a fake Superman. Superman cheating on Lois Lane. Superman blackmailing Lois Lane. Superman framing Lois Lane. Superman trying to kill Lois Lane. Superman making himself the king of Earth. Superman and Batman making Jimmy Olsen and Robin dig their own graves before executing them. Superman making Jimmy Olsen live in poverty. Superman costing Jimmy Olsen $1 million. Superman letting Jimmy Olsen or Aquaman die of thirst. Superman letting everyone die of thirst. Superman making Jimmy Olsen pretend he's his daddy. Ew. Superman making Jimmy Olsen marry an ape. Did he make them too? So the point is, if you live in a world where someone has the power to make you marry an ape, you are less free than a world in which that person does not exist. So Matthew Kramer's gentle giant thought experiment, while interesting, doesn't quite deliver the knockout blow to the Republican conception of freedom that he thinks it does. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care, and don't marry any apes, unless you want to. No, you probably shouldn't, even if you want to. I don't think people can marry apes. I'm not doing an episode on ape marriage. Bye.
I love you.
I forgot. Superman becoming literally Hitler.